Kalalau Malak Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rachak, with dash and double honors to the elders of Jemas Ruel, blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing his word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Barak today's lesson, car companies will now make the arrows. And here we have an RT.com article that says U.S. car makers could produce missiles. Right. And that comes to you from DT. Washington wants to expand weapons production after reportedly depleting key stockpiles in the Iran war and Ukraine. U.S. automakers could begin producing missiles and other weapons as Washington moves to expand military output and replenish its arsenals, President DT has said. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Monday, DT said car companies with spare factory capacity are discussing deals to manufacture weapons, including Patriot air defense missiles and Tomahawk cruise missiles. They're dealing with General Motors. They're dealing with Ford. DT said, I know General Motors is all excited about building weapons now. Well, you heard it here. Due to the U.S. depletion of stockpiles, the U.S. automakers have now become the modern-day Smiths. With that being said, let's begin in the scripture of Isaiah 54:16, which says the following. Isaiah 54:16. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work, and I have created the waster to destroy. The smith, or a blacksmith, worketh with metals. An ancient smith designed and repaired weapons, swords, and armor in ancient times. But when it comes to the modern day smith, on the other hand, he is a scientist that brings forth those deadly weapons of mass destruction. He brings forth those instruments that have the capacity to waste and to destroy. Right, those nuclear weapons, those arrows of mass destruction. In ancient times, the smith built primitive swords, but now the modern day sword is the gun. Now, when it comes to the smith, the noise of the hammer and of the anvil is ever in his ears, right? Because he's always constructing, he's always building, he's always hammering away. That's found upon the scripture of Ecclesiasticus or Sirach 38:28. The smith sits by the anvil. Let's go over to that scripture of Ecclesiasticus 38:28. Here we have that scripture of Ecclesiasticus 38:28. The smith also sitting by the anvil, and considering the iron work. The vapor of the fire wasteth his flesh, and he fighteth with the heat of the furnace. The noise of the hammer and the anvil is ever in his ears, and his eyes look still upon the pattern of the thing that he maketh. Right, the perfection. He setteth his mind to finish his work, and watches to polish it perfectly. Right. And something that's polished has been perfected. As in the case of those arrows of mass destruction, along with their guidance systems of propulsion. They are perfected perfectly with upgrades, especially in these times. And in the time of their launch, they shall not miss. When it comes to those arrows of mass destruction in the time of war, they shall not miss. The Spirit of the Lord, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, shall be guiding them to their strategic targets. With that being said, let's go over to 2 Esdras 16 and 13. Here we have that scripture of 2 Esdras 16 and 13. For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow. His arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. Those 200 million missiles shall not miss, nor break their ranks in flight. They shall fall upon modern-day Idumea. And modern-day Idumea speaks of America, aka Babylon the Great. America goes by many names, by many titles. Babylon the Great shall become the lake of fire. The day cometh when these sharp arrows of mass destruction shall be shot into the ends of the world. The ends of the world is speaking about America. But let's go over to that scripture of Isaiah 34 and 5. Since I mentioned Idumea, here we have Isaiah 34 and 5. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. The Lord's sword that shall be bathed in heaven speaks of those arrows of mass destruction. The land of Idumea represents modern-day America, but it's also a Greek word for Edom. And upon the people of my curse to judgment. Right, a good example of that curse is leprosy. Cain said that the curse of leprosy that the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahushai, put on him was too much to bear. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. That sword represents those arrows of mass destruction coming down upon modern day Idumea. They shall all take flight, and those arrows will not miss, according to that scripture of 2 Esdras 16 and 13. Because the Spirit of the Lord shall be guiding them to strike all their strategic targets. None shall miss. Babylon the Great shall be leveled and destroyed from coast to coast. Those swords of the Lord shall take flight. They shall all take flight, and none shall malfunction, and none shall be brought down during their flight. Because, as I said, the Spirit of the Lord shall be guiding them to their strategic targets. None shall miss to hit their strategic targets. That's prophecy. This is the will and purpose of the Lord, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, according to the scripture of Jeremiah 51 and verse 29. And when it comes to that scripture of Jeremiah 51 and verse 29, it has said, and the land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. And what's happening with Iran and America and the so-called small hatters, that shall eventually lead to World War III. As soon as they pass, they implement that CHIP of Revelation 13, 16 through 18, that third world war cometh quickly. And those missiles shall also touch down upon the place that the small hatters now inhabit. But that heavy bombardment shall be upon modern day Babylon the Great. Modern day Babylon the Great shall never rebuild, but the land that the small hatters now inhabit shall certainly rebuild. Once those missiles touch down, that great earthquake shall emerge. Once those missiles touch down, that scenery and landscapes that the people once knew, even upon those postcards that they get, shall change drastically in that besom of destruction. Nothing shall look like in those postcards. Nothing shall be left, and nothing shall be recognized. Nothing shall be left from that onslaught of that army of the horsemen, which speaks of those arrows of mass destruction. Let's go over to Revelation 9:16. Here we have Revelation 9:16, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. Now this is not speaking about horsemen, real men riding upon horses. No. This scripture speaks of 200 million missiles, and many missiles capable of carrying multiple warheads inside of that one missile alone. Remember that when it came to horsemen, they will charge into battle. The same thing shall be when those arrows of mass destruction are launched. They shall also penetrate enemy defenses. And shall destroy everything in their paths. Revelation 9:17. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them having breastplates of fire, and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, right, those warheads, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone, right. Warheads. Can real horses shoot forth fire? No. The scripture is talking about the deadly effects of a nuclear detonation. The heads of the horses speaks of those nuclear warheads of mass destruction. Those missiles represent destruction and the end of this wicked generation and civilization at hand. But first, that CHIP needs to come in order to kick off that Third World War. The real prophets of the Lord are stationed all throughout the four corners of this earth, and they are speaking on the things that will come in these last days that shall occur, that shall take place. A deadly Third World War of utter destruction is coming. Now, when it comes to these car companies making arrows of mass destruction, that does not come as a surprise. After all, the scripture of Genesis 27:40 did say that Esau, Edom will live by the sword. The modern day sword is the gun. But they have also perfected that sword. The sword are also the missiles. So it comes as no surprise that these car companies are now turning to make weapons. You see? Straight out of the article. Genesis 27:40 did say, and by thy sword shalt thou live. That is exactly what Esau, Edom has done, especially in these times. They are building more weapons for that coming Third World War. But with that being said, Kalalah Malak Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Kodash, and double honors to the elders of Jemas. Blessings unto those men, and blessings and salutations to the Akim out there in truth, pushing this word in all sincerity and in honesty. With that being said, Shalom Israel, Brakta. Shalom.